It was just a cardboard box, medium, taped crooked, the kind you haul up 3 flights because you're a decent neighbor. 3 minutes later, my 13-year marriage was on life support. I'm Jake from 3B in Chicago's Lincoln Park, and if you're a man over 30 who thinks that could never be me, give me 60 seconds. I carried that box to 3D, said welcome to the building, and mentioned my wife by name. No flirting, no number swap, no lingering. But from our window, my wife saw a story I didn't live. That night I was exiled to the couch, accused, and told to confess to something that never happened. Within weeks there were cops at my door, a lock on my room, and a lawyer on speed dial, all because of a box. Here's what keeps me up. The enemy wasn't another woman. It was something far more dangerous, and it was inside our home. I'm Jake Miller, 40, Lincoln Park, Chicago. On paper, my marriage to Megan looked solid. 2 incomes, a condo we'd painted ourselves, the kind of comfortable routine you grow into without noticing. Saturdays were for errands and grocery runs. Sundays, Bears games and laundry. We had inside jokes about the broken elevator and the neighbor who still used a landline. Nothing flashy, but it felt like a life built brick by brick. Lately, though, the bricks weren't fitting as tight. We argued about small things, who forgot the olive oil, why I stayed late for a client call, why she scrolled her phone at dinner. Normal friction, I told myself. Everyone hits pockets of turbulence around 40. You shrug, you sleep, you reset. That's what marriage is. Resetting. If you've ever stood in your kitchen at 10 p.m., chewing on silence and wondering how the day got so tense, you know the feeling. I thought it was a phase. I didn't know a spark was already smoldering. The spark arrived in a moving truck with Massachusetts plates. Emily Park, 24, quick smile, hair pulled back in a scrunchie, stepped into our hallway trailing cardboard and bubble wrap. I noticed the practical stuff first. The U-Haul medium stamped on her boxes, the way the tape was off-center like she packed in a rush. She was the kind of neighbor you wish for. Friendly, grateful, not noisy. I'm Emily, 3D, she said, juggling 2 bags and a box that looked heavier than pride. I've moved enough times to know that look. I offered the kind of help any decent adult offers. Welcome to the building. Need a hand? I didn't feel attraction. I felt neighborly duty and a twinge in my lower back. If you've ever helped a stranger with a couch or a snowed-in car, you get it. You do the right thing and get on with your day. I figured I'd be back in my place in 3 minutes tops. I didn't check the window. The box was typical. Medium, overstuffed, corners bowed. Books, I guessed, or a blender. I took the weight. She fumbled for keys. We did that doorway dance where you're both trying not to drop something. Inside 3D, Emily gestured to a spot by the sofa. Half-opened boxes, mismatched chairs, a plant that had seen better days. Chaos with promise, like every new start. Thank you, she said, palms to her thighs, catching her breath. I'm Jake, 3B, Megan, my wife, and I have a toolbox if you need it. I said it naturally, the way married people lace their spouses into conversations. She smiled, relieved to be done with the heavy part. No number exchange, no lingering tour. I set the box down, nodded, and stepped out into the hall. The whole thing took maybe 3 minutes, like the microwave popcorn setting. I thought the story ended there, the way most small neighborly moments do, unremarkable, forgettable, dust on the timeline. But tiny moments can cast long shadows. Our hallway has a narrow window that faces the courtyard, and from it you can see almost everything you wish you couldn't. As I walked back, I glanced up at our place. The blinds were tilted just enough for a silhouette. Megan's silhouette, arms crossed, still as a photograph you wish you could unsee. I felt a flicker of discomfort, the way you do when a joke lands wrong in a quiet room. In our kitchen, the refrigerator hummed like it had secrets. You're back fast, Megan said, too casually. Yeah, I answered, opening sparkling water I didn't want. Just helped with 1 box. She nodded, eyes doing their own math I didn't know to interrupt. There's a tension married people know, the kind that sits between 2 people like a third chair at the table. You try to ignore it, but your fork clinks louder. I told myself she'd let it go. Adults let things go. We're good at that. Until we're not. Dinner was pasta and silence. the kind of silence where the clock sounds judgmental. I talked about a client who moved a deadline. Megan countered with a shrug that said, "So?" She twirled noodles, stared at nothing, set down her fork, picked it back up. Married life is full of these small weather systems, tiny low-pressure zones that blow in, then out. My dad used to say, "Breathe through it, kid. Tomorrow will change the channel." I believed him mostly. After the dishes, I loaded the dishwasher. She wiped the counters. Teamwork without eye contact. It's amazing how you can feel alone with someone 8 feet away. Finally, she broke the quiet with a question shaped like a pin. "You think she's pretty?" The way people ask, "Do you hear that?" Quick, casual, fatal. I laughed. Too fast, too light. "What? The new neighbor? She's moving." The joke fell flat between us. I could feel the pin sinking in. I didn't know how deep it could go. If you're a man over 30, you learn which questions aren't really questions. "Do you think she's pretty?" can be a census for trust. I tried to reframe. "I carried a box, Meg. That's it." She leaned against the sink, arms folded, a look I'd seen in smaller sizes. When I missed an anniversary dinner by 20 minutes. When I forgot to text after a late meeting. But this was bigger. Older. "You were smiling," she said. "You smile with your eyes when you're interested." It would have been funny if it didn't feel like a courtroom. I wanted to reach for her hand, to remind both of us we were on the same team. Instead, I felt myself defending a moment I shouldn't have to defend. "I said your name. I said my wife." It landed like proof I didn't know I'd need. "Okay," she said, not convinced. "Okay." She walked to the bedroom. Our condo felt drafty. A door clicked. A verdict without a trial. I slept badly, that twitchy half-sleep where the mind replays small moments as if they're crimes. In the morning I made coffee the way I always do. 2 scoops too strong, mug warmed under the tap, quiet apology in a cup. Megan emerged in a robe, hair up, expression neutral, corporate polite. "Early call?" she asked. "Yeah, 8:45. I thought we were mending. Adults mend. That's our superpower. Then, as I rinsed the mug, she said, "Next time, don't linger." There it was, evidence that last night hadn't blown over. "I didn't linger," I said, too sharp. "It was 3 minutes." "You timed it?" Her smile was thin, a paper cut. I could feel the conversation spiraling toward a place we'd both regret. I kissed her cheek, got only air, and grabbed my laptop bag. In the elevator mirror, I looked like a man who'd lost the script for his own life. I told myself, this is friction, not fire. I was wrong. That week turned strange in familiar ways. Megan started asking who texted me at 9 p.m., why a coworker used a smiley face, why I stayed on a client call 12 minutes longer than scheduled. If you've been married long enough, you know the line between curiosity and surveillance is thin, and you don't notice crossing it until your phone face down becomes a statement. I tried to over-communicate, mentioned meetings, named the people on the calls, over-explained the sandwich I grabbed at lunch. It felt like narrating my alibi for a crime I hadn't committed. The more I explained, the less anything landed. She'd nod, but her eyes stayed elsewhere, as if watching a different movie than the one we were living. Friday night, I suggested Thai and a movie. "I'm tired," she said, scrolling. "You go ahead." I went to the bedroom, folded laundry neither of us wanted to discuss, and wondered how a hallway hello had grown teeth. I could already feel the bite. The snap came on a Sunday, quiet and clean. Megan stood in the doorway, arms crossed in that now familiar armor. "You're sleeping on the couch," she said, like reading a weather alert. I stared, waiting for the punchline, for the smile that meant we were still us. It didn't come. "Until you apologize," she added. "For what?" The question sounded smaller than I felt. "For disrespecting me. For flirting. For making me look like a fool in my own home." The words hit with the weight of something preloaded. This wasn't about a box anymore. It was about a story she believed and needed me to confirm. I pictured the couch, too stylish to be comfortable, the kind of furniture you buy with your best intentions. I thought about my spine, my pride, the cold gap that had opened between our pillows. "I didn't do that," I said, steady. Her jaw tightened. Then sleep out there. The door to our room closed. The house exhaled. I didn't. The new normal started with, "Can I see your phone?" said lightly, like asking for the salt. I handed it over because that's what you do when you've got nothing to hide. She scrolled like a TSA agent on a busy Friday. Quick, efficient, not mean, just thorough. Work texts, calendar notifications, a meme from a buddy about midlife knees. "Who's Karen?" "Project manager, 2 kids, talks about soccer practice more than budgets." She nodded, but the nod didn't land. If you've ever watched someone read your words out of context, you know that sinking feeling. The same sentence wears a different face when you're not the one saying it. I told myself this was a phase, like the months we fought about money or my snoring. You ride it out. You breathe. That night, I set my phone face up on the counter, proof on a charging cable. She said goodnight without looking up. The apartment felt bigger, and not in a good way. By midweek, the questions multiplied. Why the smiley? Why so many exclamation points? If you're over 30, you know workplace tone is a minefield. Be too brief, you're cold. Too warm, you're suspect. I adjusted in real time, trimming emojis like a man shaving down to stubble. It didn't help. Every notification became a knock at the door we couldn't stop opening. I tried humor. "I'll switch to carrier pigeons." She didn't laugh. If you've been married long enough, you've played this game. The more you explain, the less you're believed. I gave her context, named names, overshared schedules. It felt like narrating a documentary of my day for an audience of 1. That night, she handed my phone back face down. "Courtesy," she said. The word was small but heavy. I went to brush my teeth and caught my reflection. Man in decent shape, good job, sensible hair, checking if guilt looks different on a Wednesday. Spoiler, it doesn't. Sleep came late and left early. I told myself it was stress. We were both approaching milestone birthdays. Work had been choppy. My dad used to say marriages breathe. Sometimes they inhale, sometimes they hiss. I chose to hear a hiss. So I did the grown-up thing older guys know. Doubled down on consistency. Made her favorite coffee, left a sticky note on the fridge. Dinner's on me. Routine is medicine, and I was swallowing it. But as any man with a few miles knows, routine can also feel like a cover-up when trust is missing. At dinner, I asked about her day. She volleyed with short answers that went nowhere. Traffic. Meetings. Fine. I offered to watch her show instead of mine, moved laundry from washer to dryer without being asked. Small offerings at the altar of peace. She said thanks in a tone that meant bare minimum. We tidied the kitchen like coworkers closing a shift. When the lights clicked off, it wasn't darkness I felt. It was distance. The ultimatum arrived on a Sunday afternoon, the way storms roll in on the lake. Fast, silent, undeniable. Megan stood in the hallway, hands tucked into her sleeves. "You're sleeping on the couch," she said, calm enough to be mistaken for kind. I blinked, waiting for the "until we laugh about this." It didn't come. "Until you apologize," she added. For what exactly? I heard myself ask, even though I knew her answer would be a feeling, not a fact. For flirting, for disrespect, for making me look like a fool in our building. I pictured Emily's box, the way my back twinged, the 3 minutes I could map like a floor plan. "I didn't do that," I said, steady as I could. Megan's jaw set. "Then the couch. If you've ever stood in your own hallway and felt homeless, you know the vertigo." I grabbed a pillow, a blanket, and the part of my pride that wasn't nailed down. The bedroom door clicked. A gavel. Night 1 on the couch felt like a camping trip planned by someone who hates you. Our sectional looks great in daylight, the kind you buy when you think, host friends, watch games. It's a medieval device after midnight. Every cushion finds a new bone to bully. I tried to make a joke of it. Sent my buddy a photo. Upgraded to open concept sleeping. He thumbs-upped, which somehow made it worse. When you're 30, a night on the couch is a fight. At 40, it's a statement. In the dim TV glow, I replayed the hallway, the window, the silence, and wondered when we stopped giving each other the benefit of the doubt. Morning found me stiff and short-tempered. I made coffee, she made distance. Ready to talk? I asked. Ready to hear the truth? She countered. We were two people in the same boat, arguing about currents instead of rowing. I told myself, a few days, reset, back to normal. I was wrong. Days bled into a week. The couch carved a groove in my shoulder and in our lives. You learn things about a home at 2 a.m. Which pipes moan, which streetlights flicker, how a refrigerator hum can sound like judgment. I kept my routines, gym before work, calendar after. I left the couch made each morning, hoping it signaled temporary, but temporary morphed into policy. Megan moved my spare pillow to the linen closet like she was filing paperwork. If you're a man in your 30s or 50s, you know the shift when discomfort becomes design. I tried a timeout conversation. We're stuck, I said softly. Let's call a truce. She looked past me. Apologize, she said, like a password. It wasn't a bridge, it was a badge. I couldn't wear it. That night, I stared at the ceiling and thought about control, how it sneaks in dressed as certainty. I realized I needed more than sleep. I needed a door I could close. Our condo has a storage room off the kitchen, 8 by 10, low shelves, holiday bins, a dusty treadmill we used twice. I stood in the doorway and saw something nobody else would see, a way to survive without surrender. Men of a certain age collect tools and quiet solutions. I cleared shelves, labeled boxes, made 3 trips to the basement. IKEA knows a man on a mission. Twin frame, memory foam, a lamp that promises warm. Best Buy supplied a modest desk. By nightfall, the room stopped being storage and started being mine. Not moving out, not moving on, just moving into some dignity. I hung 2 photos from our early years, Oregon coast, a blurry selfie where we look sunburned and invincible. I wanted this to be a pause, not a parting. When Megan came home, she found me measuring for a curtain rod. What are you doing? Solving a problem, I said. You chose the couch for me. I'm choosing a mattress for my back. The reveal went as well as you'd expect. So, you're moving out of our bedroom? Megan asked, the word our underlined in invisible ink. I kept my voice even. You moved me out. I'm just trying not to hate my spine. Older couples know this choreography. One person stakes a claim, the other person names it as betrayal. What's next? Your own kitchen? She snapped. If that keeps the peace, I said, regretting it instantly. Her eyes flashed. For a second I saw the woman I loved drowning in a fear I couldn't name. Just apologize, she said, softer now, like a plea rehearsed into muscle memory. I can't confess to a story that isn't true, I answered, wishing there was a truer way to say it. She walked away, every step a sentence. In my new room, the lamp cast a small circle of mercy. I sat on the twin bed and listened to our home make night noises, and for the first time, slept. Morning in that 8 by 10 felt quiet. Not the cold quiet of the couch, but the kind you pay for at a cabin. I brewed coffee, scrolled the news, and hung a little hook for my keys. Small order in a small space. Megan announced new rules like a landlord with a grudge. I'm not cooking for you, I'm not doing your laundry. If you want to live separate, live separate. I nodded. Okay. Men my age know. Arguing with rules you didn't write only strengthens them. That night I ordered a mini fridge and a hot plate like a college kid with a mortgage. The smell of grilled chicken drifted under the door, and I heard her pause in the hallway. Want some? I asked, holding out a plate. No, she said, voice tight. 20 minutes later, the delivery driver rang our bell. We were 2 restaurants with a shared dining room. In the quiet after, I realized I'd found something I didn't expect. Space to think. Space changed the weather inside me. With the noise low and the door closed, I started reading again. Actual books, not headlines. Signed up for a certification course I'd delayed for years. Lifted weights in the building gym like a man rehabbing more than muscle. The more centered I felt, the more unglued Megan became. She turned up the TV, took speakerphone calls in the living room, hosted impromptu wine nights that bled past midnight. Headphones helped, but that wasn't the point. She needed me rattled. If you've been married long enough, you know the cruel math. Calm can look like indifference to the person who's hurting. I tried to bridge it. Notes on the counter, offers to talk, a truce draft that didn't include the word apologize. She wanted a confession. I couldn't give it. One night, after the laughter died and the door clicked, the hallway fell silent in that heavy way homes do. I lay in my small room and understood. We weren't solving a fight. We were losing a language. The truce never came. Megan went quiet in that pointed way couples know. No, good morning, no, how was work, just the scrape of a chair and the click of a door. The kitchen turned into neutral territory. I cooked simple things, eggs, chicken, vegetables, measured by the sound of the timer, not conversation. She stopped leaving sticky notes on the fridge. The calendar on the wall still said, dentist, Wednesday, but it felt like a relic from another marriage. If you've hit your 40s, you know silence can be heavy as furniture. You work around it, bump it with your hip, pretend it isn't there. I tried to name the elephant without poking it. Coffee, I'd offer. No thanks, she'd say to the sink. The air between us got crowded with unsaid things. In the hallway, neighbors chatted about parking permits and the weather. Inside, we kept score with glances. I told myself we needed a reset weekend. Errands, a movie, something easy. But easy had left the building. So I built a system. Older men love systems. I ordered a small saucepan, a non-stick skillet, a mini fridge that promised whisper quiet. I arranged them like a campsite inside the 8x10, laid out utensils in a shoebox, folded a tea towel like a peace flag I could wave at myself. There's dignity in feeding yourself, in knowing you can stand up without waiting for permission. I kept it simple. Grilled chicken, steamed broccoli, a little rice. The smell drifted under my door, a reminder that life goes on, even in small rooms. I put a corkboard above the desk and pinned a calendar, deadlines for my certification course, a workout schedule realistic for a 40-year-old back. Routines give shape when days blur. I wasn't punishing her. I was preserving me. Midweek, I added a second lamp, softer light. The room warmed. I realized I'd turned a storage closet into a habit. Show up, do the next right thing, don't light a match you can't control. Laundry day used to be teamwork. One of us sorted, the other folded, podcast in the background, small jokes about the sock that escaped. I kept doing it. I washed mine and hers, not to score points, but to remind myself I could be decent while hurt. If you're over 30, you know chores are marriage currency. Done well, they mean love. Weaponized, they mean war. I chose love, even if the receiver refused delivery. When I set her folded shirts on the dresser, she didn't comment. Maybe that was mercy. Maybe it was indifference. In my room, I labeled baskets, whites, colors, gym stuff. Order calmed me. It's what you do when life stops making sense. You organize what you can reach. I found a pair of her socks under the couch and laughed at the memory of us accusing the dryer of eating them. That joke tasted different now. Still, I placed the socks together on her nightstand. Small kindnesses are armor you can wear to bed. The TV war started on a Thursday. Volume at a level the neighbors didn't deserve. Reality shows where arguments are sport. The wall between the living room and my 8x10 isn't thick. It vibrated with someone else's drama, while ours went unsaid. Megan took calls on speaker, reciting our story to sympathetic ears with names I recognized only from holiday cards. He's living in the storage room, I heard her say, as if I were a raccoon who'd learned to use a doorknob. If you've hit middle age, you know the humiliation of being narrated by someone you love. I put a pillow over my head like a teenager and hated the image. Around midnight, the audience laughter bled through the drywall and felt like a verdict. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between laughs, the way you count seconds between lightning and thunder. I wanted to knock on the wall and ask for mercy. Instead, I put on shoes and took a slow walk around the block. Noise-canceling headphones are a small miracle, especially for men who can't fix everything with a wrench. I bought a pair and learned the pleasure of silence engineered by strangers. Under that quiet dome, I listened to audiobooks on sleep and resilience, voices that sounded like older uncles telling me to go easy, go steady. The TV still roared, but it roared somewhere else. I wrote notes in a cheap notebook, things I wanted to say without the heat of the moment. I miss you. We're on the same team. This isn't about a box. Writing made my chest loosen. If you've ever chosen to write instead of shout, You know the relief of letting words cool on paper before they hit ears. I took the headphones off to make tea and the volume hit me like cold air. I stood there with the kettle in my hand and realized technology had given me a choice: engage or protect. Tonight, protection won. I slept, and for once, didn't dream of arguments. With the noise managed, I found myself again, slow, like a man recognizing his reflection after a long illness. I read 20 pages a night of a book I'd bought 2 years ago and never opened. I practiced breathing like the app told me, not because I believed in magic, but because the alternative was clenching my jaw into dust. I did push-ups that reminded me 40 isn't 20, then did a few more. My course modules stacked up with green check marks. Progress is addictive when everything else feels stuck. In the hallway, I nodded to neighbors, kept small talk small. Inside, I left bridges within reach, an open calendar invite for a therapist, a note that said, "When you're ready to talk." If you've lived long enough, you know self-improvement can be read as a threat by someone in pain. The calmer I got, the more I felt the tension gather, like wind before a storm. Peace is not always persuasive. Sometimes it's gasoline. The storm hit on a Saturday morning. Megan stood in the doorway of my small room, eyes scanning the neat bed, the tidy desk, the lamp warm as a campfire. "You think you're perfect now?" she said, not really asking. I sat up slowly, put the book down. "No, I think I'm trying." She laughed, a sharp sound that didn't reach her eyes. "You're enjoying this, your little bachelor pad." There it was, the idea that my coping was betrayal. If you've weathered marriage squalls, you know how care can be mistaken for distance. "I'd rather be in our bed," I said, "with you." The words felt like throwing a rope across a river. She didn't catch it. "Then apologize," she said. The loop tightened. I swallowed. "I won't confess to something that didn't happen." Her shoulders dropped. For a second, she looked tired instead of angry. "You always need to be right." "No," I said softly. "I need to be honest." She turned away. The lamp kept glowing. The knock came that evening, firm, professional, unmistakable. 2 uniformed officers at our door, hands easy, faces trained in neutrality. "Ma'am, sir," the taller one said, "we received a call about a domestic dispute regarding room occupancy." I blinked. You never imagine your marriage being summarized like a lease clause. Megan spoke first, quick and clipped. "He's taken over the guest room against my wishes." The officer looked at me. I kept my voice measured, the way you do when you want to be heard. "We're both on the lease and mortgage. I moved into the storage room to avoid conflict." The shorter officer nodded slowly. "That's a civil matter, not criminal." If you're over 30, you know the difference between a problem and a crisis. Hearing it labeled felt like both relief and loss. Megan's mouth tightened. Embarrassment flushed her cheeks. The officers left us with a pamphlet about mediation. The door closed, and the echo felt louder than the knock. I stood there, a man in his own home, suddenly a visitor. After they left, our living room felt like a stage after the audience goes home, props in place, air heavy with lines no one wants to repeat. Megan stared at the pamphlet, then at me, as if I'd conjured authority to undermine her. "You called strangers on us," I said gently, more stunned than angry. "You made this official." She folded her arms. "Maybe that's what it takes for you to listen." If you've ever been married long enough to see love turn tactic, you know the chill that follows. I wanted to rewind an hour and offer her my notebook pages, the ones where I'd written softer words. Instead, I said, "We need help, not a report." "We need the truth," she shot back. The word hung like a dare. I walked to my room, closed the door quietly, and sat on the edge of the bed. The lamplight made a small island on the floor. I realized islands are beautiful on postcards and lonely in real life. Emptiness has a sound, like an apartment taking a long breath after company leaves. I heard the elevator grind, a neighbor's laugh drift, the building settling into itself. Inside our walls, nothing moved. I looked at the curtain rod I'd installed straight, the bed I'd made tight, the desk lined up square, and felt the wrong kind of pride. Order is not peace, it's just tidy. I reached for my notebook and wrote what I hadn't said. I miss the version of us that argued about paint colors. I hate this couch saga. I want my wife back. Then I wrote the thing that scared me most. Maybe this isn't about Emily. Maybe it's about fear. If you're in your 30s, 40s, 60s, you know fear wears many masks: aging, being replaced, not being enough. I closed the notebook and turned off the lamp. The dark felt honest. I lay there listening to a home that no longer sounded like home and understood how far we'd drifted without moving at all. Lying in the dark, I finally named it. This wasn't jealousy anymore. It was control dressed as certainty. That label changed the room. When someone you love stops asking for reassurance and starts demanding agreement, the ground tilts. I thought about those small checkpoints: who texted, why the smile, and how they'd grown into rules. Control always promises safety. It rarely delivers. Older guys know that need to win feeling from work battles and family debates. It doesn't fix anything. It just narrows the world until only one story fits. I remembered the couch verdict, the TV wars, the police at our door. None of that looked like a search for truth. It looked like a campaign. I told myself, hold your line, tell the truth, stay calm, don't escalate. It sounded noble at midnight. By morning, nobility felt naive. I brewed coffee, heard the bedroom door open, and saw in her face not suspicion, but resolve. Control had a plan. I needed one too. The plan showed up in scratches. I got home to find light gouges around my door lock, a butter knife bent into a crooked question on the kitchen counter. Break-in by utensil. I stared at the metal like it might confess. You tried to get in? I asked, keeping my voice level. Megan didn't blink. It's my house, she said. I have a right. It's a line I might have used about our TV or the mortgage, never about a lock between two people who once shared everything. Older men know this ache. When privacy stops meaning space to breathe and starts meaning evidence to hide. I wasn't hiding anything. I was protecting the last quiet I had. What were you looking for? I asked. Proof, she said. The word hit like a gavel. Proof of a thing that didn't exist. I felt myself step back, physically, emotionally, like you do with a live wire. Love can survive doubt. It doesn't do well with forced confessions. The knife lay there, bent and honest. I bought a keypad lock and a pair of small cameras, one for my room, one facing the common area. 40-year-old me never imagined I'd be wiring my own apartment like a convenience store, but here we were. If you've ever installed security to feel less crazy, you know it's not about catching someone, it's about catching your breath. I set them up quietly, saved footage to the cloud, and told myself this wasn't paranoia, it was documentation. Risk managers do that. Sons of meticulous fathers do that. Men who've learned the hard way that memory is a slippery witness do that. I left a note on the fridge, neutral and plain. Please don't try my lock again. It scares me. Words that small felt like a surrender and a boundary at the same time. That night, I slept poorly, camera LEDs blinking like little lighthouses. At 2 a.m., footsteps paused outside my door. No knock, no whisper, just presence, the kind that makes a room colder by degrees. The next morning, I wrote an email I never thought I'd write. Subject line, consultation. I attached a calm timeline, dates, incidents, screenshots of the lipstick word, a photo of the bent knife, notes from the police visit. Men in their 30s and 60s know this drill from work. Keep it factual, keep it short, keep it ready. Hitting send felt like stepping onto a different road. Not victory, not betrayal. Just a road I didn't want, now unavoidable. I made eggs I couldn't taste. Megan stood in the doorway, watching me plate them, as if the breakfast said something about my character. You're destroying this marriage, she said, voice tight. I looked at the egg, the fork, the window. No, I answered steady. We are. It wasn't a line. It was the only sentence that matched the facts. Her eyes flashed the way they do when a truth lands like a splinter. She left the room without touching the counter. My inbox chimed. We can meet Tuesday. Tuesday loomed like a court date only one of us knew about. That night, the fight finally got loud. "You won't even admit what you did," Megan shouted, palms flat on the table, glasses trembling. "I didn't meet force with force. Older men learn that lesson late or never." "Tell me what you need to feel safe," I said. "The truth," she fired back. "Then hear mine," I answered. "I helped a neighbor. I said your name. That's it." She laughed, brittle. "How convenient." There's a point in every argument where you can feel the gap widen with each sentence. We arrived there together and kept talking anyway. "You're ruining this," she said. "No," I repeated, softer. "We are." The echo of that line made her angrier. Rage is easier than grief. The lamp flickered, the fridge hummed, the building breathed. "Say you're sorry," she demanded. I thought about the cost of false apologies. They always come due, with interest. "I won't lie to fix today," I said. Silence answered. Her sister Jennifer texted me the next afternoon. We weren't close, but we were cordial. Holiday photos, occasional birthday wishes. "What's happening?" she wrote. "Megan's different. Older brothers, older husbands." We read between those dots. I called instead of typing. Jennifer's voice carried the fatigue of someone who's been holding another person up. "She's been anxious for months," she said. "Checking your socials, rereading old messages. She talks about aging like it's a countdown clock." The phrases landed like puzzle pieces I'd ignored. I wanted to defend myself, then realized I wasn't on trial with Jennifer. We were both trying to understand the same person. "I'm here," I said. "I just won't confess to a thing that didn't happen." She sighed. "I get it, but she's not herself." After we hung up, I stared at a photo on my wall, us on the coast, wind tearing our hats off, laughing. That woman existed. So did this one. My heart tried to hold both and failed a little. Once you name the pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. Megan's phone lit up with late-night group chats. I'd catch snatches. Trust must be earned. Men at 40. In the morning, she moved through the kitchen with a clipped efficiency I recognized from her busiest work weeks, only there was no work now, just a mission I couldn't join. I found a stack of printed articles on infidelity microsigns, highlighted like study guides. That's when it hit me. She wasn't looking for me. She was looking for confirmation. The difference matters. Men my age know that ache from performance reviews and school pickups, when someone comes in with a conclusion and a checklist to match it. You don't stand a chance. I sat on the edge of the twin bed, feeling older than my years, and allowed a thought I'd been pushing aside. Maybe this wasn't about Emily at all. Maybe it was about fear with 1,000 masks. The realization didn't fix anything. It did change my posture, less angry, more careful. Lisa showed up unannounced on a Sunday, the friend who usually brings a sane breeze into any room. She hovered in my doorway like stepping inside might break a rule. "She doesn't know I'm here," Lisa said, voice low. I gestured to the chair. The 8x10 never felt smaller. "She's not okay," Lisa began. "It's like she built a story and can't step out of it." Older men know that helplessness, watching someone you love stand on a ledge only they can see. I asked if there was a trigger I'd missed. Lisa shrugged, soft. 38 hit hard. The neighbor didn't help, but this has been brewing. We talked for 40 minutes, about the wine nights, the speakerphone monologues, the loss of easy laughter. She didn't ask me to apologize. She asked me to stay safe. Before leaving, she touched the doorframe as if blessing the room. "I hope you both find a soft landing," she said. Her kindness felt heavier than anger. After she left, the apartment echoed. Pity snuck in where frustration had been living. Not the thin kind that floats above people, but the heavy kind you wear in your bones. I still didn't excuse the choices, the police call, the lock scratches, the public narrating of our worst. But compassion is a stubborn visitor. Once it sits down, it doesn't get up easily. I made doubles of dinner and left one covered on the stove. She didn't take it, but later the plate was clean in the rack. I wrote another note. "We're both hurting. I'm available to talk when you are." No reply. That night, through the door, I heard a quiet cry that wasn't the TV. It was the sound of someone who'd run out of tactics and was left alone with the ache. Men my age know that sound from hospital waiting rooms and empty nurseries and the driver's seat after hard news. I pressed my palm to the door, an old habit from early years, and whispered, "I'm here." The wood stayed cool. Compassion didn't erase the facts. It just softened the edges. I emailed the lawyer again. Tuesday worked. I printed the timeline, slid it into a folder, and felt like a man carrying both truth and defeat. Before bed, I checked the camera feed. Nothing but a clock and the low-light outline of a life. In the morning, Jennifer texted once more. "If she says things you know aren't true, call me. I'll help." I thanked her. It felt like a hand steadying my elbow on stairs I didn't want to climb. At breakfast, Megan stood across from me, eyes red but dry. "You could fix this," she said, voice low. "You could just apologize." I looked at the woman I loved and thought about all the apologies that do work. Late arrivals, missed birthdays, harsh words you regret. This wasn't that. "I can't apologize for a story I didn't live," I said. We held each other's gaze for 3 long seconds. Then we looked away, both of us a little broken. The mediator showed up on a Saturday, the kind of morning Chicago pretends to be gentle. Gray light, coffee steam, thin hope. Megan stood by the door like an attorney introducing Exhibit A. "This is Marianne," she said, as if Marianne were a cure. We sat in the living room with polite posture you reserve for strangers and bad news. Marianne explained ground rules. No interruptions, speak in I statements, aim for resolution. If you're over 30, you've heard this script at work. It helps until it doesn't. Megan went first, laying out a story with confident edges. My smile in the hallway, my lingering, the way I changed after meeting the neighbor. Her voice shook, but her certainty didn't. When it was my turn, I told a smaller story. 3 minutes, 1 box, your name in my first sentence, a marriage that started losing oxygen long before the moving truck. Marianne scribbled notes, then looked up. I could tell from her eyes, this wasn't going to be a save. Marianne asked a question older adults recognize as the hinge. What outcome would feel fair to you? Megan didn't blink. He admits what he did, apologizes, and moves back into our bed. Today. It was a demand shaped like a rescue. Marianne turned to me. "Jake?" I chose slow words. "Honesty first. Real counseling next. If we have a shot, it's through the truth, not a script." Megan laughed, sharp, tired. "So you get to be righteous while I sit in the wrong?" That's when I felt it. A shift from salvage to stalemate. Marianne held up a hand, tried to braid our answers into something workable. The more she tugged, the tighter the knots pulled. We both kept our voices level, which somehow felt more dangerous than shouting. The climax came quiet. "Would you accept an apology that doesn't admit guilt?" Marianne asked Megan. "No," she said, steady. "I know what I saw." We all heard it. A door closing that wasn't in the room. Silence followed with a thickness you could set on the coffee table. Marianne folded her hands over her legal pad, the way professionals do when they're about to tell you the result. "I'm not the right fit for this," she said gently. "You're not misbehaving. You're living in 2 different realities. Mediation can't bridge that." I respected her for saying it out loud. Megan stared at the floor, jaw tight enough to make a dentist flinch. "So he walks away clean?" she asked. "No," Marianne said, steady. "No one walks away clean from something like this." Older men know that line. It lands like a diagnosis. Marianne gathered her notes, offered 2 referrals for couples therapy and individual care, and left us with a door click that sounded like a verdict. We were alone with our furniture and our version of events. I wanted to reach for Megan's hand. I didn't. Sometimes reaching feels like signing a confession. Instead, I stood and poured water I wouldn't drink. Tuesday arrived like a court summons, even though all I did was walk to a lawyer's office with a folder I never wanted to need. Rebecca was brisk in the way that calms you, listened without feeding my anger, underlined the facts that mattered, crossed out the parts that wouldn't help. "Legal separation," she said, not unkind. "It slows the damage and sets boundaries." Older adults understand that word, boundaries. They sound cold until you've lived without them. I signed where she pointed, my name tilting slightly at the end like it wasn't sure. On the walk home, I felt both heavier and lighter, the way you do after moving a couch down 3 flights. Proud you did it. Sorry it had to be done. I expected to feel triumph. I felt grief hiding under resolve. In the elevator, a neighbor asked about the Bears. I nodded at a score I hadn't watched. Back in the condo, I slid the papers into a drawer and heard the wood close on a chapter. I wish I could say I slept better that night. I didn't. The house was too aware of itself. Pipes sighing, the fridge humming, the tiny camera light a stubborn star. Around midnight, Megan stood in my doorway. No anger, just a tiredness that had aged her in weeks. "You really did it," she whispered, eyes on the curtain rod I'd measured straight. "You put a lawyer between us." I sat up, heart loud. "I put a line between truth and surrender," I said, softer than I felt. Older men will recognize the climax that followed, not a shout, not a scene, but a simple surrender to reality. "Then we're done," she said, voice even. "Unless you apologize." There it was, the loop closing. I shook my head once. She nodded once, turned, and walked away. The hallway swallowed her steps. I lay back and stared at the ceiling, the way you do after hard choices. Survival didn't feel like winning. It felt like breathing through a cracked rib. The invite came on a Wednesday, bright as a fire alarm. "We're having neighbors for dinner," Megan said, stirring a pot she hadn't touched in weeks. Emily and her boyfriend. My stomach did that elevator drop thing you don't forget after 40. If you've ever walked into a meeting knowing you're the agenda, you know the feeling. I could have refused, but refusal would read like guilt. "Okay," I said, hearing my own voice from far away. I showered, shaved, put on the neutral shirt. No signals, no jokes. At 7 sharp, the bell rang. Emily stood there with a bottle of wine and a careful smile. David offered a firm handshake, the kind men give when they're trying to lower the temperature. Small talk tried its best. Work, the move from Boston, the best coffee on Clark Street. But the room had a pulse. I could feel the table vibrating with a conversation that hadn't started yet. This wasn't hospitality. It was a hearing with appetizers. We sat. Chicken roasted, herbs loud enough to smell like effort. Megan poured wine with a steadiness I didn't trust. If you're middle-aged, you know that brittle cheer people wear when something is about to crack. "So, Emily," Megan began, voice sweet with edges, "Jake was very taken with you the day you moved in." Emily glanced at me, then at David. "He carried a box," she said carefully. "He mentioned his wife immediately." David tried to redirect. "This chicken's fantastic," but the table had chosen its subject. "He smiled," Megan said, eyes on me. "He lingers when he's interested." The word linger landed like a gavel. I kept my tone even. 3 minutes. 3 minutes can be plenty, she snapped. The room shrank. If you've ever watched a conversation slide off the road in slow motion, you know the helplessness. I could feel David's protective shift toward Emily, the way decent men lean when something isn't right. The dinner had become what it came to be. The climax arrived with a flat palm on oak. Megan slammed the table. Glasses jumped. "Admit it," she said, voice breaking. "Just say it." Emily's face drained. "Say what?" "That you and he—" Megan couldn't finish the sentence. Her breath came in hard clips. Emily's eyes shone, not with drama, but with embarrassment and something like fear. "There's nothing to admit," she said, tears sliding without permission. "He carried one box. He said your name. I went back to unpacking." David stood with her, chair legs scraping a verdict. "We're leaving," he said calmly, the way a doctor delivers hard news. No flourish, just fact. For a moment, time froze. Roast cooling, wine catching light, my heart recording a moment I'd remember in unfair detail. Megan whispered, "You're both lying." Not shouted, whispered, like a truth only she could hear. If you've lived long enough, you recognize that look. Not anger, not jealousy. Certainty without evidence. That's when I felt something tilt inside me for good. After the door closed on our guests, the apartment sounded like aftermath, the clink of settling glasses, the dull hum of a fridge that didn't care. Megan sat, shoulders slumped, eyes glassy with a grief that refused company. "Why won't you just say you're sorry?" she asked, so small I almost missed the edge. I thought about all the apologies that had worked in our life, late arrivals, sharp words, missed plans, and how this one would break something I couldn't glue back. "Because it would be a lie," I said, steady. The sentence felt like stepping onto a bridge I'd been avoiding. She stared at me like I'd chosen an enemy. Maybe I had, just not the one she imagined. If you're over 30, you know when a home stops being shelter and starts being a museum of arguments. I cleared plates I didn't taste, rinsed a pan that didn't need it, and felt a decision settle where fear had been. Tomorrow, I would find a place to land. I didn't sleep. I packed in my head. The night had that hospital quiet tone, monitors humming, time stretching like gum. I opened my laptop and searched short-term rentals the way you search symptoms you already understand. Options blinked. Studio near the park, month to month over a deli. I emailed my lawyer. Next steps for separation logistics. Calm words, cracked heart. At dawn, Chicago did what it always does. Pretended nothing happened. Buses sighed, joggers counted miles. The city brewed its coffee. I made mine, set a cup on the counter for Megan out of habit, then slid it back. Habits can be cruel. When she walked in, she didn't speak. Neither did I. There's a mercy in not repeating last night to people who were there. I grabbed a duffel, folded what I needed, and paused at the doorway of the 8x10 that had saved and shrunk me. If you've lived a little, you know the difference between leaving in anger and leaving to survive. I chose the second. The crash came before the shout, ceramic shattering in the kitchen, a sound you feel in your molars. I walked out to a snowfall of plates on the floor, our wedding set in sharp white pieces. Megan stood barefoot in the wreckage, chest heaving, hair loose, eyes wild with a grief that needed somewhere to land. "Take what's yours," she said, yanking open drawers, slamming them shut, as if the furniture could testify. I stayed by the doorway, palms open, voice low. "Careful. You'll cut yourself." Older men know the fine line between helping and provoking. I didn't cross it. She grabbed the TV, dragged it an inch, then let it go and kicked a box until tape split like a wound. It wasn't rage for show. It was a body trying to outrun a story. A frame fell from the wall, our honeymoon photo, sand and sun, and two people who thought time was on their side. I picked up the frame and set it gently on the counter. It looked like evidence from a better life. The doorbell saved us from a worse chapter. It was Mark, her brother, the steady one, the guy who fixes deck rails and pays parking tickets on time. He took in the scene with those practical eyes older siblings earn. "Sarah called," he said quietly. "Said it was an emergency." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't pick a side. He stepped between us like a firefighter reading smoke. "Meg, shoes," he said, nodding toward the glass. She swayed, defiance wobbling into fatigue. He guided her to a chair, scanned the cuts that hadn't happened yet, then looked at me, not accusing, asking. I shook my head. No injuries, only the kind you can't point to. If you've lived a while, you know when a man is carrying more than a person. He's carrying the story no one wants to tell out loud. "Let's get some air," Mark suggested, tone gentle as a hand on a back. Megan's shoulders sank. For the first time all day, the room exhaled. I don't know why I chose that moment to say it. Maybe because truth grows heavy if you hold it too long. Maybe because secrets rot the floorboards under a home. "I filed," I said to Mark, but really to her. The word hung like a foghorn, one note that fills the whole harbor. Megan went very still, eyes on the middle distance where memory and prediction blur. "Legal separation first," I added softer, "then divorce." If you're over 30, you know the guilt of choosing the necessary over the kind. Mark's jaw worked, then settled. He nodded once, the way men say, "I'll handle the logistics so you can handle your heart." Megan's face changed in the small ways that hurt most, the blink that stalls, the mouth that forgets what to do. "You filed," she repeated. as if trying on a coat she never wanted. I stood there with my hands at my sides, feeling like a man who just signed for a delivery everyone will hate. She broke without breaking anything this time, knees folding, body dropping to the tile in slow motion, a person surrendering to gravity and loss at once. "You killed me," she said, and the words were pure, not weaponized, like a diagnosis spoken through a sob. Mark was already kneeling, arms around her, careful of the shards, voice doing that big brother murmur people learn in pediatric waiting rooms and at 2 a.m. phone calls. I wanted to kneel too. I didn't. There's a cruelty in offering comfort when you're the shape of the pain. I grabbed a broom instead, swept glass into safe piles, the way older men do. Fix the room because you can't fix the moment. She cried until the crying emptied out and became breathing. "I loved you," she said, present tense, refusing to arrive. "I know," I answered, and meant it. Truth didn't feel like a sword. It felt like a winter coat, heavy, necessary, nowhere near warm. When the apartment finally quieted, the silence wasn't relief. It was the kind you hear after the doctor leaves with the chart. Mark helped Megan to her feet, shoes on now, dignity where it could be found. "Come stay at my place," he said. She nodded, small and far away. At the door, she looked back once, and I saw all the versions of us flicker, paint-splattered jeans, late grocery runs, dumb jokes about the stubborn elevator. Then the hallway swallowed them. I set the broom down and sat on the floor, back against a cabinet, among the plate fragments and the frame we didn't hang back up. If you're in the middle stretch of life, you know this particular ache. Sorrow without rage, love without answer. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel righteous. I felt tired in the soul, the way a man feels after carrying an apology he can't give and a truth he can't change. I whispered, "I'm sorry," to no one and everyone, and let it echo. The court part was quick, the way winter sunsets are. There, gone, colder after. Papers signed, stamps thumped, a clerk who'd seen 1,000 endings slid copies across a counter. I kept the condo. Megan received a fair settlement. No victory lap, just errands. Older adults know the list. Change the utilities, update the insurance, remove a name from the streaming apps you never watch. I boxed our holiday decorations, splitting them like peace terms, her favorite snow globe, my lopsided ornament from 5th grade. The closet looked bigger with half its history gone. I found a hoodie she used to steal and put it in the donation pile, then took it back out. That night, I cooked for one and ate over the sink like a man between decisions. The silence didn't judge, it simply recorded. I washed the one plate, dried it, returned it to the exact same spot. Order stood where love used to. When the mail slot clicked, the envelope sounded louder than it should. It wasn't the envelope. It was Jennifer's call. Her voice carried that careful weight people use around the truth. "Jake, the doctors say it's depression, maybe a delusional disorder. It wasn't just you, it's been building." I sat down on the edge of the bed I'd once built to survive a fight and felt both smaller and somehow steadier. If you've lived long enough, you know the shock of finally learning a story's real villain and realizing it doesn't look like anyone you can blame. Images rushed in, the window silhouette, the bent knife, the dinner that turned into a trial. I had argued with a storm and expected it to reason. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Nothing right now," Jennifer said. "Just know she's getting help." After we hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't break. I listened to the room breathe and let the diagnosis rearrange the furniture in my head. The enemy hadn't been Emily. It had been something we never named. A year later, I saw her on a bench in Lincoln Park, the kind of gray afternoon Chicago wears like a coat. She looked smaller, thinner, hair pulled back without the flourish she used to give it, staring up at our old building like it might answer a question. I almost kept walking. Older men know that instinct, protect the scar. Instead, I sat at the far end of the bench, leaving a decent space, the way you do at airports and funerals. We watched a dad teach his kid to throw a baseball, 2 bad tosses, 1 good catch, and for a second, life looked simple. She spoke first. voice soft and exhausted. I lost everything because I couldn't tell what was real. I let the sentence breathe. I lost you, I said. You lost yourself. She nodded, a slow acceptance that hurt more than anger. Most days I believe you now, she whispered. Some days I don't. That's progress, I said, meaning it. We sat quietly, winter birds stitching the sky, and let the truth be gentle for once. Walking home from the park, it clicked. We didn't lose to betrayal, we lost to fear. Hers wore the mask of youth slipping away. Mine wore competence and silence. She was terrified of becoming invisible. I was terrified to admit I'd changed too, less playful, more tired, hiding in work and routines that looked like devotion. Middle age teaches you math. You can love someone and be running from the mirror. I thought integrity meant never saying sorry for a lie. It does. But I confused integrity with immobility. I could have said, I see you, sooner. I could have named the storm, not defended my shore. We didn't speak the language of reassurance until it was a dead language. That's on both of us. Back at the condo, I stood by the window where all this started and let the admission land. I didn't cheat, but I did change. She changed too. Fear wrote the script. We performed it together. One cardboard box, 3 polite minutes. A life split down the seam. I stand in my condo and hear what isn't here anymore. No courtroom voices, no TV wars, just the soft thrum of a refrigerator and a city moving on without us. Payoff isn't triumph, it's clarity. Here's mine. Holding the truth sometimes means losing almost everything, but losing yourself costs more than any lawyer can measure. I didn't cheat. I did change. So did she. Fear wrote our script. We read our lines like prose. Still, the box wasn't the villain. The silence was. If you're somewhere in the middle stretch of life, hear this from a man who learned late. Say, I see you, before someone goes blind with doubt. Ask for help before the house needs police lights to feel heard. Tonight I fold the extra blanket, turn off the lamp, and leave the door to that 8x10 ajar, a reminder that space can heal or harden, depending how you use it. If any part of this is your story, share it, so someone else doesn't rerun ours.